of every villain lies a story untold, a journey of pain, betrayal, and loss that transforms them into the darkness they become. This tale sails into the life of a woman named Aria, whose residence is in a quaint village where tradition reigns supreme. She was a weaver of tales and tapestries. Her figures, as skilled with threads, were so with her words. The stories were as vibrant as the colors she wove, and the villagers would gather to listen, enraptured by the words she spun. But not all were pleased with Aria's tales. Whispers of discontent began to spread, sowing seeds of doubt and disapproval. The criticism strong, each word a needle pricking at Aria's heart. The more she heard their harsh words, the more Aria's spirit withered. She began to question her talent, her purpose, her place in the village. The joy she once found in storytelling turned to ash in her mouth, and the vibrancy of her tapestries dulled. One day a traveler came to the village, a man of strange attire and strange ideas. He saw Aria's sorry situation and offered her a gift, a vial of ink as dark as the moonless night.
This ink,
He said,
will bring his stories to life. But be warned, they will reflect the heart of the weaver.
Desperate to prove her worth, Aria accepted the gift. She dipped her quill into the ink and began to write, pouring her pain and anger into every word. The stories that emerged were no longer bright and hopeful, but dark and twisted, filled with sorrow and tragedies. The villagers recalled in horror of the tales that now seemed to come alive before their very eyes, their admiration replaced by fear, and Aria found herself shunned, an outcast in her own home. As the criticism turned to fear, Aria embraced the role they had cast her in. She became the monster of her own stories, a weaver of nightmares. Her heart, once full of warmth, was now a fortress of ice. Once there was a boy named Raphael who walked through the halls of his middle school with slumped shoulders and downcast eyes. It was the canvas on which the cruel artwork of bullies was painted day after relentless day. Their words and actions, like daggers, chipped away at his self-esteem, leaving scars deep within his mind and body. Puberty arrived like a storm, bringing with it a surge of strength and height that Raphael had never known. As he transformed, so did his position in the social hierarchy. No longer was he the easy target. Now, he towered over many of his peers, his presence demanding a second glance. But the past is a persistent shadow, and Raphael found himself haunted by the memories of his tormentors. The laughter that once echoed in his ears now rumbled from his own throat, directed at those who reminded him of his former self. He became the mirror image of those he had once feared, a defense mechanism twisted into aggression. Raphael's bullying was not born out of malice, but out of a misguided attempt to shield himself from further pain. He believed that by becoming the bully, He could rewrite his narrative, control the stories that had so far been penned by others. It took a single moment of clarity, a reflection of his actions, in the tearful eye of another, for Raphael to realize the cycle he had kept alive. The realization struck him with the weight of all his past burdens, and he understood that in his quest of power, he had become the villain of someone else's story. In the heart of the city, where skyscrapers pierced the clouds and ambition filled the hustle of the streets, there lived a man acknowledged as Michael. He was the epitome of a modern-day warrior, armed with a sharp mind and a relentless drive to climb the corporate ladder. Michael's story began like many others. He was a bright-eyed graduate with dreams of changing the world. He joined a prestigious firm, eager to make his mark. But as the years ticked by, the sheen of idealism faded, replaced by the dull gloss of reality. The endless hours, the cutthroat competition, the sacrifices, everything took its toll. Michael's work became his life. He was no longer a man, he was a cog in the machine, indispensable yet replaceable. As he ascended into higher positions, the stakes grew, ethical lines blurred, and the gray areas became his playground. He justified his actions as necessary evils for the greater good of the company. Profit margins and shareholder satisfaction became his new creed. With supreme position as a fickle friend, the whispered sweet nothings of invisibility, while plotting betrayal. Michael's ascent made him enemies, those who envied his success and those he had to step onto to reach on top. One fateful evening, a scandal broke. Documents were leaked, implicating Michael in a web of corruption and deceit. The evidence was damning, a concussion of truth and lies so intricately woven that it was impossible to untangle. The media frenzy was relentless. Michael, once the golden boy of the corporate world, was now the most vilified villain. In a small village shadowed by the legend of an ancient curse, there lived a boy named Ratty. His lineage was tainted by tales of malevolence. His ancestors were said to have conjured darkness upon the land. Ratty yearned for nothing more than to erase the sins of his bloodline and live amongst his peers with acceptance and warmth. But the villagers only saw the curse in his gaze. They rejected him, whispering curses under their breath as he passed. Ratty's heart grew heavy with each day, his spirit wilting under the weight of a legacy he never asked for. As he grew, so did the whispers, and so did the isolation. The rejection turned his grief into anger, his sorrow into power. The same villagers who cast him out soon felt the tremors of his wrath. Ratty, once a boy seeking a place among them, now stood as a villain, a self-fulfilling prophecy birthed from the very fear and scorn that had followed him all his life. The village learned too late that it was not the curse of Ratty's ancestors that they should have feared, but the curse of their own making, for in their haste to protect themselves from an ancient evil, they had created a new one, powerful and relentless, in the form of a boy who just wanted to belong. On the surface of a vintage city, where also the skyscrapers touched the clouds and the streets hummed with life, there was a boy named James. His world had crumbled when fate, cruelly snatched his parents away, leaving him alone with the city's cold concrete as his only comfort. James' day blended into nights as he wandered the alleys, invisible to the throngs of people who passed him by. His heart ached for belonging, for someone to see him, to care. But the city had no mercy for a lone boy with sorrowful eyes. It was in desolation that James found kinship with the shadows, a gang of outcasts. They too had been neglected by the world, and together they vowed to fight injustice that had left them all behind. They became his family, his protectors, his educators, and the harsh lessons of the street. But as James grew within the ranks, the line between justice and vengeance blurred. The gang, fueled by the rage of the forgotten, became a force that the city could not ignore. They struck at the corrupt heart of the metropolis, their actions echoing like thunder through the streets. James, once a victim of the city's indifference, had transformed into its most feared enigma. It was no longer a boy lost in the crowd. It was the tempest, the roar of the oppressed, a terror to those who had once looked through him. And though he wielded power that could shake the very foundations of the city, inside he was still searching for the warmth of a home that was forever lost. Criticism, power, position, expectation, injustice, and many more are all reasons behind a villain's villainy. Damn, I think I too might just become a villain.